Hello everyone, my name is Karthik. Welcome to a new series of tech learning called Tectonic. And today I'm going to share a quick demonstration of Kubernetes. So let's get into understanding what Kubernetes is, and there is a quick demo as well. And before we understand anything about Kubernetes, there are a few prerequisites to understand, like Dockers and containers and installing Kubernetes, what is Minikube, and once all this is done, then how do we deploy and then the service and the end result. So first let's learn what is Dockers and containers. So Dockers and containers is a new type of virtualization which has changed the way the industry is looking into virtualization. This is our traditional virtualization wherein we have our physical server hardware on which we have a server OS, and after the server OS is installed, then the virtualization happens where you can install multiple different types of OSs. So you can have your Ubuntu, you can have your Windows OS, or you can have your CentOS or any other OS. But by bringing in Dockers and containers, the whole architecture is changed where we have our server, the physical server, and we install one server OS like Linux. And once that is installed, then we install Dockers and containers. So you install Dockers, and once Docker is installed, you can deploy number of containers, and it is a very light container. So it is as good as even if you want to install Ubuntu on a Docker, it takes less than 5 minutes to deploy Ubuntu. So on Ubuntu, you can deploy a container with any of your applications. So you can install or you can deploy a website, and the website can be hosted from there on. So what makes this easy, right? So what makes it easy is it doesn't run the complete operating system. It runs only the core components and hosts the website. So what next after this, right? So say we have a website like Amazon and we start getting a lot of traffic. So then we have to scale it up. So to scale it up, what we do in Dockers and containers is you have to deploy another container and divert your traffic to both the containers and it works. But if you're able to understand how much you need to scale, then this is a manual process. However, there is a way to simplify this, and that is Kubernetes. So what is Kubernetes? It is a container orchestration tool, and it is developed by Google. So what it does is the moment there is a website or an application which needs to scale up, it scales up automatically and it scales down as well automatically. So that is Kubernetes. Okay, so welcome to Kubernetes. And when we talk about Kubernetes, the deployment or installation of Kubernetes is quite a lengthy process. Okay, and to install Kubernetes, you need to have a master machine uh, uh, and a slave. Okay, so once you install your Docker, and then you need to go ahead and install all this. So you need to update your repository, turn off space, and then update host name and static IP, install OpenSSH server and Docker, and you need to install the core components for Kubernetes, that is kubeadm, kubelet, and kubectl. So these are the components which are required, some to be done on your master machine and then to be run on your worker node. Okay, so this is your master node and this is your worker node, and these both need to be in a cluster. So we will be setting up a cluster, a Kubernetes cluster, where we have the master machine and the worker machine join it. Okay, so this is a lengthy process, I understand. So to make it simple, what we get to the next topic is Minikube. What is Minikube? So Minikube is an application which you can install on your laptop, and get all the required components for running Kubernetes right in one step. So this is a good tool to understand or to learn Kubernetes, where we have the kubectl and the Docker CLI need to be installed, and then using PowerShell you can run Minikube on your desktop, on your laptop machine. So I have already installed Minikube, and the command to start Minikube is Minikube start. And as you see, we have the version 1.16 installed, and then it is installing all the control plane node for Kubernetes that is required. It prepares your Kubernetes, and we are running on Kubernetes version 1.20, and the Docker container version is 20.10. Okay, so it verifies the Kubernetes components and it enables the add-ons, and done. Kubernetes is ready to deploy. Okay, so what we're doing here is by having Minikube, we are simplifying a lot of process wherein you don't have to go through the steps of installing uh, Kubernetes, Kubedium, kubectl, and all of that. Okay, so what we're going to do next is, so once the Kubernetes is configured and we have the Kubernetes ready to go, so let's start with a basic command kubectl get nodes. So this will give us the Kubernetes version, which is the version, and the node. So this is our master node, and this is being deployed 11 days ago. So it gives you a duration of that. And then now what we're going to do is we are going to create a deployment. Okay, so we'll be creating a deployment. So this is just a simple small application which we will be installing to check if our Kubernetes works on Minikube. Okay, so this is a deployment. Okay, so we are using the kubectl create deployment, and the deployment is created. And then the next thing we do is to expose the deployment. So when we expose the deployment, then we are informing to, we're giving the port number. Fucked up. Let's understand Kubernetes. Kubernetes is the container orchestration tool, so where we have our containers and it is managed or scaled up or scaled down by Kubernetes. But to do that, we need to install Kubernetes, and we need to deploy Kubernetes, and we need to configure it in a way that it works for us to get the desired outcome. So let's understand Kubernetes a little more deeper. So we have our physical infrastructure here, then we have our VMs deployed. So once we have our VMs deployed, to deploy an application, we need something called as a pod. So the pods are inside the cluster. So we create clusters and we have our pods deployed, and inside our pods is the application that is running, which is a container. So later, these need to be managed, for which we install the cluster manager or the orchestration tool, that is Kubernetes. To install Kubernetes, we have certain steps that are required to be done. And when we have to deploy Kubernetes, we need a master node and a worker node. So there are a few prerequisites which we need to do, that is such as updating the repository. So here we are talking about installing Kubernetes on a Ubuntu or a Linux OS, for which we need to update the repository. We need to turn off the swap space, and then update the host name, host, and set static IP, and install OpenSSH server and Docker, and then install the core Kubernetes components like kubeadm, kubelet, and kubectl. And all these need to be done on the master node, and then we have the worker node. So once we do all this, we have the master node and the worker node. So we need to form a cluster. So we form a cluster with the master and the worker node. Whew, too much, isn't it? So a solution for this to understand or to learn Kubernetes is Minikube. So welcome to Minikube. So what does Minikube do for us? So Minikube is a tool which minimizes the steps of all the installation of the Kubernetes and makes it simpler for us. And this Minikube can be installed on Linux or a Windows OS. So here I have installed Minikube on my laptop and which is working on Windows. So what we do, so we first install Docker CLI and kubectl, so for which we install Minikube, which in turn installs the Docker engine, the kubelet, and the Kubernetes API. So this includes all the three components that we were speaking earlier, that is kubeadm, kubelet, and kubectl. So all this is deployed and it is ready in no time, like this. So this is a PowerShell and this is how we interact with the Minikube. Okay, we have already installed Minikube, and as I was saying, this is the PowerShell and this is how we interact. So let's run the command minikube space start. Okay, so what it does is starts the Kubernetes cluster. So Minikube is running on version 1.16 on Microsoft Windows 10 Enterprise. That's my laptop OS. And it is automatically selected the VirtualBox driver. It started the control plane. And now it is creating VirtualBox VM with two CPU cores and 6,000 MB of memory and 2000 MB of disk space. So that's the hard disk storage space. Okay, let's wait for it. So here it is going to deploy Kubernetes. Okay, and as we see, it is preparing Kubernetes version 1.20 on Docker version 20.10, and it is booting up the control plane, configuring the rules, and verifying Kubernetes components, and we have Kubernetes ready. Isn't this much easier? Okay, so now let's first run our first Kubernetes command, kubectl get pods. Okay, so we do not have any pods running right now. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a deployment. So we are going to just quickly test the environment. So this is a deployment that we are creating. Okay, so the deployment is created and we're going to expose the deployment so that it is visible to the outside world because right now it is available only for Kubernetes. Okay, so the deployment has been exposed and now we're going to run or get the services for it started. Now, so this deployment is basically a Nginx server we have started, so which is basically a web hosting kind of thing. So the deployment we have started here is Hello Minikube, and the namespace is default, and the name is Hello Minikube, and the port is 8080, and this is the URL. Okay, so to get this, you have to start the Minikube service. Okay, so once the service is started, you will be able to go to that particular link and check the website. So let's quickly do that, right? So let's check if this is running. So this is my web browser. And in the web browser, I'm going to go ahead and enter the URL that is http colon forward slash forward slash 192.168.99.102. Okay, so here we go. So it is available. So if you see the client address, this is my client address and this is the request URL. Okay, and this is the server values. It is, as I said, this is an Nginx web hosting. Okay, and this is a basic page once you host it. Okay, so this is how the web hosting goes. Okay, so we know our Kubernetes is running because we are online and I have run the particular IP address and it is running, it is working. So now let's go ahead and stop the services. Okay. Okay, to stop the service, let's again run the command kubectl delete services hello mini cube. Okay, so as you see, the service has been deleted. So let's go to the website again and refresh it. It is gone. So now we are no more able to visit this particular website because we have just deleted the service here. That's it for today, and we will meet in the next video. Thank you very much. Bye for now.